Greetings, humans. My name is Adam Michelli, and today I'm going to talk to you about the most fundamental topic in all of spirituality and the most fundamental topic for understanding how the world works and how to create ultimate happiness in your life. We're going to learn today the exact opposite of happiness, and we're going to learn about ego. And we're going to learn what ego is. We're going to learn why it exists. I'm going to talk to you about how to begin to transcend ego. And we're also going to learn about how ego is the root cause of all of your suffering. Now, this is a super ambitious video because I've spent hundreds of hours researching and learning about this topic, and I'm going to attempt to explain it as clearly and as concisely as I can in one video. So buckle your seatbelts. I'm super excited. Let's get right into it right now. What is ego? Now, ego is a word that you've probably heard thrown around a lot. It's used in many different ways, but the way that I'm going to define ego in this video, this is what it is. Ego is your self. It is your self-image. Ego is what you believe yourself to be. It's what you believe that you exist as. So if I point to you right now, you, hello, hi, you, yes, you, not someone else, you. That, whatever you think that I'm pointing to, that's what ego is. It's your identity, your separate self. That's what it is. That's the definition that we're going to use. And now, we're going to talk about why this separate self exists, which is very, very deep. And let's see if I can articulate this properly. You exist as an identity. You don't exist as a physical body. That's not what you are, because what you believe you are right now is not what you actually are in truth. You believe that you're a physical body, you have features, you have a personality, you have an entire life story, you have a name, you have certain personality traits. All of those things is not what you are. This is your self-image. This is the false self. This is your self-story. This is ego. This is what it is. So I believe that my name is Adam. I'm 19 years old. I have a family. I like spirituality. I like talking. I have a beard. I have all these personality traits. These are thoughts. These are traits, and they're all kind of mushed up together in one big ball of shit, and that's what you believe you are, is this big collection and entanglement of beliefs and stories and ideas. That's what the ego is. The ego is your separate self. But this separate self is mostly a fiction. In fact, it's completely a fiction. It's a story. You made it up. When you were born into this world as a baby, and let's say you were able to look in the mirror, you wouldn't recognize yourself because you are not the body. And as a baby, you are very close to your true self. And your true self is what you were before you were born and what you were when you were deep asleep last night. That's what your true self is. And notice how it's absolute nothingness. It's not a thing. I can't point to it. I can't show you what it is. And that true self is not my words. It's not a belief. It's not the thought of what you were before you were born. It's the actual thing. Like, what were you before you were born? Whatever that is your true self. And as a baby, you're very close to that because you were just born. You're coming straight from the source of existence. And you don't have an ego developed yet. So when you look in the mirror, you can't recognize yourself. But as you get older, maybe when you're around 2 years old, you're able to look in the mirror and make a very, very important distinction. You're able to look at yourself and say, oh, this is me. And everything else is not me. And what I'm saying is, at that exact moment, you were born. As an ego, as a conceptual self. That moment when you're able to make the distinction between me and not me, that's when you're born. Very radical. That's when the ego is born. And the ego is what you are. You're not the body. You're not even the mind. You are whatever you were before you were born, but you're confusing that nothingness and you're getting it confused with this ball of beliefs, which is the ego. That's literally what you are. You don't exist as a separate self. So whatever your name is, whatever your life story is, all of that's a fiction. And that's what ego is. Now, as I'm saying these words, you might be getting a little bit defensive. You might feel weird inside because your ego, it's a fiction, it's a story, but it's also very real. It's just not what you are. The reason why the ego exists is to perpetuate your survival. Your body's survival, but also the survival of your self-image, the idea of yourself. That's what the ego wants to perpetuate. The ego wants to maintain itself exactly as it is. And that's what survival is the maintenance of yourself. And that's the number one goal of your life. As an ego, is to maintain yourself and to do whatever it takes to manipulate reality, to manipulate other people, to manipulate the present moment in a way that is favorable for the maintenance of yourself as a separate self. Now, there's a lot of problems with this. This is the root cause of all your suffering, but we're going to get into that just in a couple minutes. I want to talk a little bit more about why the ego exists at all. Why do you exist as a separate self? Now, as we study hundreds of different perspectives, we study different religions, and there is one truth, one absolute truth that stands out of everything else. All of the different perspectives, the religious truths, and basically everything is pointing towards one absolute truth. And that truth is that everything is one. All is one. That reality is infinite, but it's one. It's infinite, but it's one. It's an infinite membrane that stretches out to infinity in all different directions and dimensions, but it's one. It's one membrane. It's not separated at all. It's not two, it's one. That's what non-duality means. Non-duality is not two. So it's non-duality is a spiritual teaching that is basically the study of the fundamental oneness of all of reality. And it's my favorite thing to study, and it's super, super, super difficult to understand conceptually, and it's super difficult to explain to other people. But this fundamental oneness is what you are. You are not a separate little corner of reality, but you're actually the entire thing. All of infinity, all of God. That's what you are. But you don't have to take what I'm saying on blind faith. You might say, okay, Adam, how do you know this? Well, this is an experience, this oneness. You can have a direct experience of this oneness for yourself. And I've had little glimpses, little tastes. Definitely not the entire jar of honey, but I've had a little taste of this honey. And when you experience the oneness of all of reality, you realize that your separate self, your ego, is a fiction. That's why you hear the hippies always saying, oh, we're all one, man. Yeah, life is all one. Yeah, we're just part of one being. That's the absolute truth. So, we're getting really deep here. Your ego wants to partition reality. So, this oneness, let's call it God, okay? So, this oneness is like one infinite mind. A good way to imagine it is when you're dreaming, when you're snoozing in your bed and you're dreaming, let's say you're dreaming of a mountain. You're walking through the mountains. That dream, there's many different little parts of the dream. There's the mountain, which is different from the sky, which is different from you, which is different from the trees in this dream. But fundamentally, if you look at the substance of this dream, it's all identical. The substance is just mind. So in your dream, everything is one. It's all made of the same membrane. But there's different appearances that you make distinctions between, and you basically separate this oneness and you chop it up into different little parts. So there's one little part that's a mountain and it has certain features. It's tall, it's brown, it has a certain color, a certain look, and then there's you in the dream and you are a certain way. And then the trees have their own types of qualities. And in truth, you're not aware of this, but in truth, the whole dream is just one thing. It's membrane. It's all one. But there's little parts that are not fun. They're not absolutely real. They're relative. And that's what you are. You're just a little part of one infinite dream. And you've tricked yourself into thinking that you are an actual part and that you're physical and that you live on a physical material world that's floating in space. It's all a story. It's just more parts of the infinite dream. So imagine that you are one infinite being. It's basically, how do I imagine this? There is a really good analogy that actualize.org put in his video, Understanding Absolute Infinity. And he said, I want you to imagine an infinite object. So basically imagine a sphere, but its size is infinite. There's no end to it. It's really difficult for your mind to wrap around. But not only is this object infinite in space, but it has infinite qualities as well. So it has every possible smell, and it's also every possible color, and it's every possible sound. It's every possibility. And that's what reality is. It's one infinite it's every possibility to infinity. That's what it is. And you, as a separate self, are but one of these infinite possibilities. Because reality, God, is unlimited. And what unlimitation means is that you're unlimited, and you're so unlimited that you can create any limitation within yourself that you want to be. And you, as a self, you who I'm talking to, is one of those limitations, one of those little parts of God's infinity. And that's what you are as an ego. But in reality, you are the whole thing. Now, hopefully you're still following. This is basically the deepest, most fundamental truth that I've come across. And now we're going to talk about how we can use this metaphysics, this understanding of reality, to attain ultimate happiness for ourselves. So, this fundamental oneness is what you are in truth, but it's inclusive of everything, and it accepts all. It is the energy of love, where your ego, your separate self, this little weak, little petty being that you think you are, that operates primarily under fear and separateness. Because the main purpose of your ego is to maintain separateness. Because if you don't maintain separateness, you literally die as an ego. That's why when somebody comes and tries to change who you are, or tries to change something you believe to be true, you resist and you get scared, because that belief that you believe to be true about the world, let's say you're a Christian and someone questions Christianity, you get scared and you react against it. Because that belief has become a part of who you think you are, and you want to maintain it. So the ego wants to maintain separateness, and the way it does this is by manipulating reality and by operating under fear. And this is what creates all the suffering in your life. All of it. When we're practicing meditation and we're sitting and we're meditating, you realize that there are certain conditions in your life that you don't want to experience. So maybe your knees hurt a lot, your knees are killing you, but you don't want to experience that pain because it hurts you. It can damage your body, which is what you believe to be your separate self. So you resist that pain and you're scared of it, and you try and separate yourself from it, and you try and protect yourself from that pain. And that resistance to the pain is what is causing you to suffer from it. Because if you were to fully open yourself up and accept that pain, then you wouldn't suffer from it. It's really amazing. There's an enlightened master whose name is Peter Ralston, and he's transcended the ego and has changed his identity from this little separate self to all of existence. And he was able to get a root canal in his tooth, where they dig into the root of your tooth, which is like the most painful thing ever, without any type of numbing or any type of laughing gas, which is usually what they put you under when they give you a root canal. Peter Ralston, an enlightened master, was able to sit in the dentist chair while he's getting a root canal, not resisting the pain, but loving it, sitting there in total bliss and happiness. Because that is what is possible when you do spiritual practices, which the aim of which is to decrease your identification with the separate ego and to basically become whatever is left, which is absolute nothingness. It's here right now. Whatever you were before you were born is here now. It's the foundation, the groundless ground of this present moment. And that's what you're trying to realize when we do spiritual practices. So I'm getting ahead of myself, but basically, as we're able to accept the present moment, regardless of what condition is arising, regardless of if it's bad for the ego or if it's good for the ego, we accept it unconditionally and we love it unconditionally. And that is what ultimate happiness is. Unconditional acceptance of the present moment. Ta-da! That's what it is. Unconditional happiness is unconditional acceptance of the present moment. And the only way to do that is to completely obliterate ego. Because as long as you have ego, it's impossible to unconditionally accept the present moment, because there's always conditions in your life that threaten you all the time, every day. And in order to perpetuate your survival, you have to fear those conditions that are not good for your body or your mind. What we're doing with spirituality is we're meditating, and we're trying to accept the present moment however it arises. And that's the key to all of reality right there. That's what ego is. That's how you've created a separate self. And what you are is basically one little partition in God's infinite mind. You're just one little part. Like when you're dreaming and you see a tree, you're that tree. Even though that tree is really in truth the entire dream. So, hopefully you're able to follow what I'm saying. I basically just channeled all of that information. This is the highest wisdom that I've gathered. This is some of the deepest spiritual truths. And understanding these dynamics of ego is really super fundamental for you understanding how reality functions. Because as you look at politics, as you look at everything, as you look at the way you talk to people, as you look at the way all of society is structured, and you see that everyone is just trying to perpetuate and maintain their own ego, their own self, their own false beliefs of reality. They're trying to maintain that. That is how all of reality is structured. And you're able to really understand what's going on here in this place that we call Earth by learning and studying ego dynamics. So I'm going to put this video out. I'm going to watch it over. I'm going to see if it makes any sense or if it's easy to follow at all. And if not, I'm going to have to make a series where I'm going to go into each one of these points in this video into more detail, and I'm going to spell it out for you, because a lot of these things are very, very difficult to understand. But in my opinion, they're the most important topic to study, because we're talking about what all of reality is made of, and we're talking about how to achieve ultimate happiness for you personally. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.